Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Brick Railway Builders podcast, a podcast where I interview other members of the Lego train hobby. This is episode 2, and here with me for this episode is Lego train builder EdTheShed. Hello, Ed.
Hello, Luke. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. This is going quite well. So the nature of this podcast is more of an interview for people in the Lego train hobby. It's just to kind of introduce everyone to everyone. This is something that I have been interested in doing in a long while, and so far I think it's going quite well. In this podcast, I have a series of questions lined up for the guest. These questions are subject to change in future episodes. The wording of some of these questions could be slightly altered. Some new questions could be added. Some questions could be taken away in future episodes. And that is ultimately something for those future episodes to dictate. But for now, let's jump straight in. So please introduce yourself by telling us your name and whether you are a T-foal or A-foal.
My name is Ed. I am an A-foal, but I've been building since I was 16. Well, I've been building trains since I was 16. I've been building since I was 4.
Are you like me, where you've been building from really early ages? You're like exposed to Lego early on?
Yeah, I think I got my first Lego set when I was 4, yeah. And I've still got it somewhere.
As you build railway-related models, what is the type of train theme or region that you build?
I mostly build British things, as those of you that will follow my Flickr page will know. I specialise in 6-wide British models. Although I do want to maybe try out that Belgian quadruplex at some point. British trains there. We'll just go British trains.
It's interesting how you mentioned the quadruplex, because that immediately takes me back a couple of years when I made my Giants, and it's a very brave thing for you to say I want to build a quadruplex, because it's not quite as easy as you think.
Oh god, I cannot imagine that being easy at all.
Oh, the amount of parts,
all parts of it articulated, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's something like that where it's very, I'm not sure what the word is here, but it's interesting to see how people can react where they go from something of that size to something quadruplex size. And when someone finally tackles a big boy, sometimes it can be really daunting on them to go, oh god, I need more parts. This is actually much bigger than I thought. The scale is, that's his own complaint. Technically it's correct scale-wise, because, American engines are bigger anyways. But going from basically one size engine to another can take people by surprise.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'd stick with 6-wide even building the quadruplex, just because that's what I've known. That's what I started with, that's what I'm going to stick with for now.
That would be very interesting to see, because naturally when you look at some of the bigger American articulated engines that people have built and posted online, they're normally between 8 studs wide and 10 studs wide. So for a 6-wide variant, that would be I'm very curious to see how you tackle that.
It's going to be an absolute bother to build, but it will be interesting to have a quadruplex running.
It definitely will, yeah. If you're able to power it somehow or make it kind of go around the track on its own, that alone will be one hell of a feat.
Oh, that is my speciality. I love trying to get things to motorised.
Okay then, so having mentioned your 6-wide models, tell us a little bit more about your current Lego train collection.
So, right now, I haven't actually got much built, but I've got a lot designed. I have all of my models next to me, actually. I've got an Intercity 225 set. We've got 3 coaches, a drive and trailer, and the locomotive. The first proper train I built, and it's probably my favourite based on nostalgia alone. I've also got the Austerity, which you mentioned, steam train build, and I'm very happy with how that turned out. I'm definitely going to get that running at Shildon this year, I think. And I also have a Class 45 Peak as well, just for a little bit of variation.
Sounds like quite the fleet you've got there already. So, have there been any models that you have made in the past, and then you scrapped it, but then you look back and you think, oh, I wish I didn't scrap that model?
And as I'm quite new to actually building them, I haven't had the chance to really build anything and scrap it.
Yeah, I've definitely had you. Well, this is. I think this would be a good lesson from me, in the sense that I've made countless Lego trains over the years, and there was definitely this period of time, sort of in the sort of early mid-teen years, like 2010 sort of thing, where I would make a Lego train and it would be scrapped a few days later. I had no permanence with any of the models I made at the time, but having grown up and kind of decided to, well, it was mainly custom design models as well. Nothing I made back then was based on any real prototype. So now that I've entered this stage where I'm making realistic engines, they're 7 wide, 8 wide, they've got more detail, it's definitely helped me maintain some kind of permanence to them. So and that's kind of a good thing as well, where if you're going to make a model, it'll be good to try and keep. Obviously, there's some people who make models who will change them, take them apart, rebuild them, make a different iteration. But it's never worth doing what I did years ago, just making something that you could smash together in a day or 2 days, only to take it apart by the end of the week.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like having to think about what I'm building, piece it all together elegantly, almost.
I think that also comes into play where, again, like I said, they were custom design engines. I didn't really focus on making anything in the real world until 2019, I want to say, like only 3 years ago. So even with all the trains I've made over the years, they were just, I don't know why I never had the interest in making realistic stuff. I think it was because I was in the mindset of I'd rather make custom locomotives just so I can not feel bad about scrapping them later on in the week. I don't know. It was a weird phase for me. So what is your locomotive preference? Steam, diesel, or electric?
I don't really have one. I mean, I've got one of each right now that I've built. I've designed a few diesel, a few steam. I haven't really made many electrics now that I think about it. But I do want to make a Class 92 at some point. I don't really have a preference. If it's a train, I'm happy.
There's a lot of people that can learn from that little sentiment there. If it's a train, I'm happy. Need to introduce more people into building trains and introduce them to how magical it is. Do you have a most favourite and least favourite model that you've built so far?
My favourite would have to be the Class 91. It was the first one I did. I did it from scratch, without designs, without... I just what's it called? I freestyled it, basically. And it's turned out so beautifully. I think I'm happy to look up at and just see on my top shelf. It's beautiful to look at when it's running, and I'm just glad that I managed to do it. So yeah, I'd have to say that'd be my Class 91.
That's definitely, I suppose that's in the same sentiment where Mike last time, he said his model of Gordon is his sort of, I can't remember what he said, like in the actual term he used, but that's the face of his railway, in the same sense that my Streamlined Coronation is the face of my railway. Your Class 91 would be like the face of your railway. What about your least favourite? Any particular model that you've built and you thought, that could be better, or anything along those lines?
Again, seeing as I've only got 3, I think that would be my Class 45. It is a good model, and I like the way it's turned out. There are just some things that do bother me a little bit. For instance, the cover on the bogies, it's just very simple, and I can't think of any other way to do it. The roof sometimes looks a bit odd if you look at it in like a specific angle. But it runs alright.
Yeah, so long as it runs and it doesn't like derail or crash or anything, I suppose that's one of the key points.
To be fair, I'm surprised it doesn't derail often given the weird layout.
So are there any models that you haven't built yet, but you would love to build? So what's your to-build list, basically?
Referencing my Flickr page here, I'm going to go right to the bottom. I've got a Class 14 in the near future. I want to build a Class 68, 88. Just very happy with how my design on that turned out. And it is literally one locomotive with a different... So I get 2 for the price of 1. That'll be an interesting build. One that I haven't got on my Flickr page is a W2 concept. You've seen that one, haven't you?
Ah, yes, your W2.
Yeah. Sort of a take on what if the W1 was more successful, and what if Grizzly built another. It wasn't entirely my design. I love the look, and I sort of modified it to make it a bit more me. And I absolutely want to build that in the near future. Given my lack of experience with steam engines, I might wait for a little bit.
That would definitely be an interesting model to see done, because there's been not that many I suppose a what if would be the best way to put it, where it's a custom design, but it very obviously has some kind of real world basis. There's definitely something you can take from it and go, oh, there's elements of this. Oh, I can see some of the design choices for this bit. So yeah, your W2, it was entered into the TLR awards, not the Brick Train awards, though, was it?
It was entered into the TLR awards, yeah. It wasn't entered into the Brick Train awards at all. I don't think I actually entered anything into that. I did my class 45 for best rendered loco, but I didn't do the W2 into anything.
Yeah, definitely keen to see that in the future.
Thinking about naming it as well, actually. I think I might call it the Butterfly.
That's a good point, because I remember watching a video. The channel's called Train of Thought, and he does these little 2 or 3 minute videos about train lore. So he did a video on the W1. There's something I didn't know before about the engine, where it was considered, like, there was 2 names considered for it. So it was either going to be called British Enterprises or Pegasus. So that, I suppose, was the animal related names like that could probably work if you wanted to give it that sort of name for your W2, because that even now has a real world reference, because Pegasus again was one of the names selected for potentially being chosen for the W1.
I definitely think the animal names are interesting, especially within LNER. They had quite a few, didn't they? They had, what was it, the Bongo for the B1s. Butterfly would fit quite well, especially as it's meant to be an LNER locomotive.
So do you have any favourites or standouts LEGO train builders that you are following online?
I have 2 main ones that I take inspiration from. One of which is British Bricks, who I'm sure pretty much everyone in the LEGO train community is aware of. And the other one is Smith Movies, who got me into this hobby in the first place. I try and combine the 6 wide element of Smith Movies with the detail given by British Bricks' MOCs. And that's the reason why the austerity looks detailed almost. I tried to take inspiration from...
It's quite interesting that you mention Smith Movies, because I think Isaac was one of the main people who got so many others into the LEGO train hobby, because he was definitely the person who kind of got me into the LEGO train hobby. I remember seeing his videos years ago, and one thing is that's fascinating. I finally got a chance to say this as well. So I don't know if anybody's going to really agree with me when I say this, but Isaac Smith Movies, I believe it was him who popularized the use of decals, but specifically model lining tape. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, that's so brave of you to put stickers on your model. I didn't really look at it as professional decals. Yes, the models look way better than, just bland, green and black bricks to make Flying Scotsman. You add the lining to it, it looks so much better. But I was still in the mindset at the time of, that's just a sticker. I don't want stickers on my bricks. That's awful. But then as time went on, I kind of got a bit curious, because I remember making my model of Thomas the Tank Engine. And when I finished the model, it was just a blank blue tank engine. I thought to myself, I think I'm going to have to concede here and try this whole lining ordeal. Let's see if it's actually that good. And there's definitely this this sort of barrier. Seeing something online is one thing. Seeing that same model in person is something else. So when I lined my model of Thomas, that was it. I was sold. And I was so amazed at how much of a transformation those details, turned it into. It went from an 8.5 blue tank engine to an 11 out of 10 Thomas the Tank Engine model. So Isaac has definitely done something where he, what's the word? Pioneered, I think that's the word to use, pioneered the use of model lining tape. And since then, I'm seeing more models online where people are adding these decals. Sometimes they're printed directly onto the bricks, but the lining on British locomotives at least, because of course that's what Isaac built. And it's just seeing, it's become much more natural now, where you look at one of the a model that someone's made and posted it online. It's got lining details. If it's stickers, cool. If it's something else, it doesn't really matter what it is, so to say. but it all stems, I believe personally, it all stemmed from Isaac. So sadly, he's left the hobby because he's doing other things, but he has, maybe, I don't know if he knows this or not, but he genuinely, I believe this, like, firmly in my heart, that he has pioneered this wave of, or this new standard of Lego train models because he was brave enough to try something. It's amazing. He's so cool.
I absolutely agree there. And that's the lining thing, as you mentioned, that's why I've got it on my austerity. I've got red lining. It's in an LMR livery. I did it in college one day, and when I'd just about finished, I'd done all the building. I brought it in, and when I was done, I was ecstatic. It looked brilliant. It looked gorgeous. It's a shame that Isaac left the hobby because, he got me into this years ago before I had the potential to start building, and I'm still building now. With the bricks we have today and the ideas we have, I reckon he'd absolutely revolutionise 6 wide builds.
I think Isaac will. Yeah, I think Isaac will come back one day. Not so much to, maybe he'll build something new, but I think it'll be more so just to pop his head in, like he'll see how everyone's doing. And I'm very sure, like, I'll definitely be there to greet him and say, "Oh, you popularized using lining tape. These are my models. This is all because of you. Thank you so much." That sort of greetings and thank yous. So my final question for you is, what upcoming projects do you have?
Some of this overlaps with the things I want to build. I do want to build maybe the Class 68 next, or maybe the Class 14. Some of the stuff you see on my Flickr page, that'll be coming up quite soon. I'm going to get some wagons as well, because I have a distinct lack of them. Get some plank wagons and maybe a couple of Mark 1 coaches to run with my austerity and my Class 45, because I don't really have anything to run with them. Maybe some more rolling stock, basically.
Rolling stock is something that has always been a bit of a struggle for me, because again, I've always focused on building locomotives. This goes back to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, where I built an engine at the start of the week and it got scrapped at the end of the week. Because I did that for a long period of time, I never focused on making any wagons. I would make a few odd coaches based off whatever came from sets. That was more coaches, and in terms of freight rolling stock, again, I kind of make whatever was from sets, and any custom stuff would be really, really basic. And even now at this point, I've focused more on the passenger side of things, but I've only got 2 types of passenger coach. Well, actually 3 types of passenger coach that I've built, and I can actually say I'm happy with. I've got a couple of boxes holding my rolling stock. The main box is of wagons that I would actually take to shows, and the other one is the more simpler stuff that's from sets and that sort of thing. But that box, the one that I'm keeping to a side that I don't take anywhere or even touch anymore, is way more full than the dedicated rolling stock box I've got with my layouts.
Yeah, I've got 1 set of dedicated rolling stock, but that's just the Mark 4 set. I do want to have some more general rolling stock so I can make different consists for different trains. That's just my take on it, though.
Yeah, I think building rolling stock definitely needs to be loved a little bit more. There needs to be a bit more appreciation. Well, it's not to say it doesn't need, it needs to be more appreciated. I think I'm just looking in the wrong places, because when you're looking at the hobby, obviously the first thing you see someone make is a locomotive. When they go ahead and make some wagons and rolling stock, it's kind of, you can scroll past that post really easily, because I don't think it's been treated fairly. I'm definitely in the camp where if I tried to post a wagon today, I don't think I would even care about the wagon that I made, because I'm kind of stuck in this current mindset. But even then, like this, I suppose what I'm trying to say is a work in progress list, or like a to build list full of wagons, would be a very good thing to have for any builder, really.
One thing I want to do with my wagons is I want to have them be more interactive. So, for instance, if you look at the plank wagon I posted on my Flickr page recently, it's hollow rather than full. I'd rather have loose studs as coal than a brick built thing, just because it adds that bit of interactivity to it. The same thing going on with the tender on my austerity. It's got nothing in there bar the Circuit Cubes battery box. And when I go to Shildon, I'm going to put some studs in there. I've also got a crane a steam crane in the works at the minute.
Ooh.
I'm going to put a motor in there. Put 3 motors in there, sorry.
So you said you've got a circuit cube in your Austerity, the tender engine?
Yeah.
I think pretty much everybody who knows about circuit cubes has a circuit cube, except for me. I'm not really... I don't have any models I could... Well, I do have models I could probably work with the circuit cube, but I've never sort of taken that plunge. What was it like to install the circuit cube? Is it easy to really control?
It's got a circuit cube in the tender and the motor is under the cab.
Is it difficult to control? Like, how easy was it to install the circuit cube?
It was actually very easy because I designed all of my steam engines the same way. A pair of Technic bricks with the holes in them, 2 wide gap in the middle of them. So I just shoved the motor in there and it fits perfectly. Only downside is it does mean that they have to stay almost permanently coupled because the wire between them is between the tender and the actual locomotive. Not too hard to put it in the cab itself, but that will get in the way of the detailing. I think I'm going to leave it there.
That reminds me as well, having mentioned earlier that you would rather put like 1x1 round pieces in the tender for coal. Have you ever had, or even any of the wagons, have you ever had any of them full and the train derails and they spill everywhere? Have you ever had that happen before?
No. Only when I'm an idiot and decide I'm going to drop the box that I have that is full of studs. That was not a fun afternoon trying to find them all.
Oh no.
Like a little treasure hunt. Yeah, I mean, the upside is you can easily detect it by just walking around your bedroom floor without socks on. And then you know when you found it because your mouth makes this ouch sound because you stood on it.
Okay, so that will do it for this second episode of the Brick Railway Builders podcast. Ed, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for giving me your time.
Having me on the podcast.
And because this is the second episode, we're still working on an outro tagline. So we'll BRB with more BRBs. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. I will leave links to all of Ed's social media pages in the description down below. Go show him some love. Go follow him on all of these social media pages. Thanks again for watching. I shall see you soon.
Goodbye.